Hello and welcome to On the Record with me, Shireen Bhan. The Cabinet yesterday decided to clear a 200 rupee cut on every cylinder of LPG. It works out to a subsidy of about 400 rupees a cylinder as far as the Ujjwala scheme beneficiaries are concerned. But to talk about the LPG economics and more importantly to talk about what next as far as the government's measures are concerned, joining me now is the Minister for Oil and Gas, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri. Mr. Puri, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. Sir, if I could start by talking to you about the LPG economics, and what we are given to understand at this point in time is that the 200 rupee cut is across the board for all 33 crore beneficiaries. It works out to a subsidy of about 400 rupees per cylinder under the Ujjwala scheme. Does the government believe that, given the fact that there is no cash loss as of today or no under-recovery as of today on LPG, there is no need for any subsidy on the non-Ujjwala part?
First of all, Shireen ji, thank you very much for having me on your show. The pleasure in interacting with you is always mine. Let me run you through some of the basics of the arithmetics. I don't even call it the economics. You're absolutely right. There is a 200 rupees cut in price for the gas, LPG, liquefied petroleum gas cylinder. Today, we have approximately 32 crore connections. Shireen ji, in 2014, the number of connections were about 14 crores. 45% of our population, that is the population of users, were outside this LPG cylinder system. What does that mean? Cylinders were difficult to get. There was a black market on the cylinders. People had to bribe their way through the supply man, etc. All kinds of things happened. We brought that from 14 crore connections to 32 crore connections. Today, an LPG cylinder is available wherever you want it, in any part of the country. And we are augmenting that through supply of natural gas through a pipeline. We had 14,000 kilometers of pipeline in 2014. We've taken that to about 23,500 kilometers of pipeline, and we are hoping, madam, to raise it to 33,000 kilometers of pipeline before long. Now let me come back to cylinder and subsidies and cut-in prices. It's a very interesting system. If you go into whether there are recoveries, under-recoveries, etc., you will never be able to get precise answers. As for instance, gas pricing on natural gas, we've had to introduce formulae in order to insulate the consumer. Here what we've done is it's a 200 rupees straight cut for every LPG cylinder. And in addition to that, the beneficiaries of the Ujjwala scheme till yesterday were 9 crore 60 lakhs. All of them were getting a 200 rupees payment under DBT, which was going straight into their khata. For them, it's a 400 rupees benefit. That is 200 rupees gas cylinders reduction from 1100 to 900, plus their subsidy, it comes down to 700. So in over, it's a combination of a very bold political decision by the Honorable Prime Minister and a decision which has far-reaching impact on the entire economy, the benefit to our sisters, which is a gift from him on the occasion of Onam and Raksha Bandhan. And as in the past, the OMCs, as good corporate citizens, took a loss. Later on, they were reimbursed. What will happen now? Because the recovery situation, OMCs in the first quarter of the financial year, madam, I'm talking about April, May, June, they all posted very healthy profits. And I just want to share a secret with you. When I used to sit down with my colleagues and friends, the CMDs, and they used to say, sir, under recovery ho rahi hai, ye nahi ho raha, wo nahi ho raha, daam badh raha hai. So I used to say, but you're also good corporate citizens. Today I can tell you with confidence, they've demonstrated that they are good corporate citizens. So who's the beneficiary? The consumer and the economy overall. Because the economy has been insulated from all the shocks. You've got enough availability, you have good affordability, and you've got very good track record on green transition and sustainability. So the Honorable Prime Minister has made it possible to take this timely decision, pass on the benefit to the consumer with every part of the ecosystem, both the OMCs and the state collaborating in order to make it possible.
Mr. Puri, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, sir. So let me just take that point forward. As you said, that every individual and every stakeholder is collaborating at this point in time, and the OMCs find themselves in a much better position fiscally, and hence they are going to be able to absorb this. But as you did in the past, sir, if a need were to arise, today there is a situation where there is no cash loss, there is no under-recovery, there is an over-recovery in your words. If there were to be a situation where there would be a change, Mr. Puri, would the government then provide subsidies as you did previously? There was a 22,000 crore rupee subsidy that the government provided as part of the additional supplementary demand for grants. Would that be accommodated should the need arise? We've lost that line with Minister Puri, but we'll re-establish that connection with him. As we just heard there from the Minister, what is very clear at this point in time is that the subsidy will be provided only for the beneficiaries of the Ujjwala scheme. That's about 9.6 crore beneficiaries. For the non-Ujjwala part, there will not be a subsidy at this point in time that will be provided. The cut, of course, is 200 rupees per cylinder. As the Minister was also pointing out, this is a political decision that has been taken. Remember, LPG prices continue to be administered. Mr. Puri, we've re-established connection with you. As I was pointing out, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, sir. If I may, as you pointed out today, there is a situation where the OMCs find themselves in a much better position fiscally. But should that situation change because of global prices, etc., and there were to be a need for the government to provide subsidies, as was the case previously, you provided 22,000 crore rupees as part of the additional supplementary demand for grants last year. Would that be accommodated should the need arise?
Look, Shirinji, let me start with an opening thing that I'm normally not confident in addressing hypothetical situation. The good news is, so far, everybody has cooperated. You've been able to ensure that petrol and diesel prices have come down in the last 2 years. 5% is the petrol price decline, 2% or so is the 0.28% decline in diesel prices. LPG cylinders, despite the Saudi CPU having gone up by 303%, we allowed the increase only to up to about 63%. So there is a mutual give and take in all this. What would happen further? As I mentioned to you, madam, the first quarter, April, May, June has been good. They have posted reasonable returns. Some of them have posted more than reasonable return. The next quarter, we are talking here about July, August, September. We are almost at the point of 2 months over and the third month starting. I have no doubt that the good performance of the first quarter could well be continued into the second quarter also. That's half the year. Now, how do we deal with the situation? Supposing some zigzags or under-recoveries take place, we have the confidence, we have the bandwidth of dealing with it between the OMCs and the government. So I'm confident that we will be able to navigate the situation further, both on availability and affordability.
Let me ask you one final question as far as LPG is concerned before I address other issues, sir. What is the rough estimate at this point in time as far as the Ujjwala scheme is concerned? Because there the subsidy goes up from 200 to 400 rupees. If I were to just take a look at the number of refills, for instance, 9.6 beneficiaries took no refill, 11.3% took only 1 refill, 56.5% took 4 or fewer refills in 21-22. On the back of those estimates, what would the rough estimate be in terms of the subsidy outgo on Ujjwala?
Madam, I have a very simple answer to this. Number one, the average, you take out how many people took one. The position in terms of refills on Ujjwala is very simple. You are allowed to take up to 12. But no household uses 12 refills. Not even the households which are in a situation of marginal or affluent subsistence. You don't need a 12 cylinder. So the average has gone up from 3 cylinders to 3.7 cylinders. Now, we are also separately carrying out an exercise. It is entirely possible that in one building, there's one Ujjwala connection in the name of Shireen, the other one is in the name of Shireen Kumari, another one would be it's possible that these are happening, and people don't need to take the connection. If there are households working together, I apologize, I'm taking your name, I could have used mine as well. So what is happening on an average, consumption is increasing from 3 to 3.7, and I must tell you, the subsidy has not gone up from 200 to 400. The subsidy continues to be 200 rupees for every Ujjwala beneficiary, except that the number of beneficiaries are going to increase from 9 crore 60 lakhs to 10 crores 35 lakhs. And in addition, what will happen is, there are some people who are getting access to other mediums, or there are some people who feel that this average of 3.7 is close to 4 cylinders per family. In my assessment, and I've done a fair amount of studying on this, 4 cylinders plus is what an average household with a small family size would use.
Right. Mr. Puri, I have no issues whatsoever, sir, for my name to be used, except that I'm not a consumer of a cylinder anymore. I have moved on to piped gas. But if I could then move to talk to you about the potential or the possibility of another bold political decisions, and the expectation is that this is a Raksha Bandhan and an Onam gift that the government has given to consumers. What can we expect next? Fuel prices, petrol and diesel, sir, the last time we saw an excise cut was on the 22nd of May of 2022, when the government cut excise by 8 rupees on petrol and 6 rupees on diesel. There's expectation building that perhaps that could be the next measure. Is it a fair expectation to have?
Shirinji, I used your name with a degree of confidence because I knew you would not use an LPG cylinder. There's a story in that also. The number of people who are beneficiaries of piped gas through a connection has gone up from 25 lakhs in 2014 to 1 crore 25 lakhs or more, and it's increasing all the time. Second issue, piped gas is considerably cheaper than LPG. Now, you are in a festive mood. Raksha Bandhan, aapko shubhkamnaएं, aapke parivar ko shubhkamnaएं. What I want to tell you is, essentially, and in terms of sequence, the first step must be the BJP central government and states reduce their excise on 2 occasions, November 21 and May 2022. All the BJP states reduced their VAT. So I think it stands to reason that the non-BJP states should now bring down their VAT. They've been increasing it. Punjab increased it. So I request you, through your good offices, send the message out that the BJP, non-BJP states, instead of sending criticism our way, should look inwards and reduce the rate. And I promise you, we always like to meet our friends and collaborators at least halfway. And I think more such happy decisions as were announced by the Honorable Prime Minister. Once the non-BJP states reduce their non-VAT, I will become an advocate for further reduction, provided the non-BJP states do their bidding job first. And then we will step in to see what more can be done if the results are good.
So Mr. Puri, I'm just picking up on what you've said. You're essentially saying that any further cut in excise on either petrol or diesel will be incumbent on non-BJP states first cutting VAT?
Well, that's the construct you have put on it, that the non-BJP states must cut VAT first. I'm not given to speculation, but I'm going to tell you, in terms of the doctrine of common sense, central government reduces excise on 2 occasions, BJP states reduce their VAT. Otherwise, we'll have a band of guys who are criticizing us all the time and then raising their own revenue, which they put to non-productive uses. I mean, you've got a government in Punjab and a government in Delhi which admitted to a party, I'm talking about the party, they admitted to spending 1,100 crores on advertisements, Vigyapan, and they couldn't pay 400 crores for the RRTS project. Equally, they are you know, raking it in on liquor, both legit and the scandal part, and they are not reducing VAT in Punjab. In fact, they increased the VAT recently. So all I'm saying is, yes, I'm in a slightly negotiating mood, but I'm not the guy who calls the shots. Yes, if the BJP states can reduce VAT, so can the non-BJP states reduce VAT. And if they reduce the VAT, we'd be very happy. Kande se kande milake agle kadmon ka sochenge.
So if I could put a different argument on the table for you, given the fact that inflation is at this point in time a challenge and a concern, the Reserve Bank, of course, is doing what it can. Do you believe that there is a need for the government to consider bringing down excise on petrol and diesel to try and rein in inflation? Because while we have done much better in comparison to what the inflation situation is globally, it is above the RBI's comfort level at this point in time. If I were to put that argument before you, do you believe that it warrants consideration today?
You know, I mean, you always make an excellent intellectual point. I mean, if you are concerned about inflation, about which we are all concerned, there's always a case to be made out for ensuring that there are no interest rate hikes and not adding to an inflationary situation, making sure fuel prices are lower. That's a case which is always there. But you know, you and I live also in a world which could broadly be characterized as a political world. I mean, you want me to reduce excise, which I did. You want the BJP states to reduce VAT, which they did. Now, we'll all talk about inflation. Let's start by reduction of VAT in the non-BJP states. And then, you know, what my senior colleague Nirmala ji is tasked to do, what the RBI is tasked to do, I'll sit down with them and see what more we can do in this sector.
Okay. Okay, let me then move on, sir, and ask you about what the current situation is as far as our imports from Russia is concerned. In July, we actually saw a decline by about 5.7% in terms of imports from Russia. The expectation is that we are expected to see that continue through the month of August. Can you explain to us whether there is a deliberate pullback and what is the trajectory likely to be?
Thank you, Shirinji. I can always trust you to ask questions which help improve my understanding. First of all, there's no question of any deliberate decision by us to import more or less from a particular source. The government has nothing to do with this. The importation is being done by the private sector and the public sector companies, and they do it in a very transparent way. What they do is they float a tender and ask for prices for delivery at our port, and whoever has the lowest price, they import from that. Insofar as Russia is concerned, you're absolutely right. The month you named, there was a decline of 5.7% in this thing. But you know, this is a dynamic situation. I mean, when the military action took place from Russia to Ukraine, I'm talking about February of 2022, at that point of time, we were importing hardly any oil from Russia. I think it was 0.2%. In the first 2 months after that, there was a sudden increase in imports from Russia. Why? It's a price sensitivity issue. You have a situation where earlier 5 million barrels of oil that we consume, about 4 or 5 sources supplied 800,000 barrels a day or roughly thereabout. Then what happened is the imports from one particular source went up, came down. Today you have a situation where from 2 of our sources, Russia down 5.7%, may come down further if what you say is correct. Saudi Arabia, which is a major supplier, there's a reduction. But there is a reason for that reduction. The reason is that Saudi Arabia charges something called an Asian premium, which is for countries in Asia to look at the differential between prices to Europe. Now, so obviously, if the importer, whoever it is, it's private sector, Reliance or Indian Oil or whoever it is in the public sector, these are global companies. One of them is the world's 7th largest company. The others are very big international companies. They will buy the cheapest. So if today Iraq, I believe, is selling because there is geographical proximity of distance. So this is a dynamic situation which will go on altering based on the current global situation. But 2 messages I want to give you. One, we are doing well, we are navigating it well, essentially because we are playing the market card. If somebody comes and tells me, no, you have no choice but to buy more expensive from me, I tell him, we used to buy from 27 countries, now we buy from 39 countries. If you sell more expensive, I may have a cheaper supplier. Did you ever imagine that we would be buying $20 billion of energy from the United States in a year? I was Joint Secretary on the Americas desk. I could never have dreamt of it.
Mr. Puri, I just want to focus on that, sir. As you said that you will go wherever you get the cheapest crude. Can you explain to us where things currently stand in terms of the average price of crude in terms of Russian imports today? And who would be the cheapest supplier to India as of today of these 39 countries that or suppliers that you spoke of?
You know, these are transaction-based values, madam. I don't think anybody is going to look at an average price. There was a time when there were very high Russian discounts. There was another time very high discounts from some of the Middle East suppliers. And then it's not a question of what discount they're giving. You have to factor in the freight and the insurance. I mean, if you have a point proximate to India in the Gulf, obviously their freight cost is much less. On the other hand, depends on which Russian port you're going to get it from. If you get it from some of the northern ports, then the cost of freight is even more. It's a very complex system. But as far as we are concerned, it's not the government that does the buying. It is the companies that do the buying based on transparent tenders. And I can tell you the amount of requests, queries that we receive. How can we be a part? Today, India is one of the large markets for crude. And it's a place for energy where things are happening. Our E&P is going up. Our transition to green energy is gaining momentum. So there are a lot of people who would want to come in here and partner. Most of the world's largest exploration and production companies have now got ties up here. The green hydrogen story is moving well. So this is a situation which can move dramatically. If somebody is undertaking voluntary production cuts, which is what is happening in OPEC+, well, they are trying to keep the price high. We, on the other hand, through sensible buying, we will try and buy at the lowest price. There will come a time, if the price is too high, people will not buy. There's a large economy in the world, which has a $16 trillion economy. You know for the fact that there are economic problems there. Their capacity to buy, even at the current levels, may not be sustainable for a period of time.
Mr. Puri, you talked about the transition towards greener projects, and I want to ask you about that in the context of the fundraising that we've seen companies announce, whether it's BPCL or IOCL. Each board has approved fundraising plans. If you can leave us with some milestones that you hope that these companies will be able to clock and achieve in the next 12 to 18 months. I know that there is a 5-year window and a 5-year roadmap as well, but I wanted to understand more in the immediate term what we can expect in terms of capex.
Well, first of all, there are separate issues involved, Shirinji, in your question. One is overall capital expenditure. All of them are meeting their capital expenditure targets very satisfactory. The other is, if you're talking about green hydrogen and the move towards green hydrogen, I'm happy about the fact that these companies are dealing with it. IOCL has 11 refineries. I think 2 are going to be producing green hydrogen. I'd like to see Mr. Vaidya add another 3 or 4 to them, equally with BPCL and the other. Look, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of international money coming into the green hydrogen story in India. I know one company which has brought in $32 billion of investment. They're setting up plants all along the Indian coastline. They've already entered into contracts to supply green ammonia to Germany, green ammonia to Singapore. Look, hydrogen or a gas does not lend itself to transportation. Therefore, it stands to reason that green hydrogen will succeed, and succeed famously in large consuming countries like the United States and India. Why? There has to be a local demand. Then there has to be a capacity to produce. Every electrolyzer manufacturer in the world that I'm aware of is tied up with some company in India. The government has stepped in after the Honorable Prime Minister made a statement on 15th August 2021 from the Red Fort that we will do green hydrogen in mission mode. Now, the government stepped in with an inclusion of a provision of 19,700 crores under PLI. Now, that's what made the electrolyzer. What do you need? In addition to that, you need cheap green energy, economical. We are one country in the world which has demonstrated that we have brought down the price of a unit of green energy from 25 cents to 3 cents. So if you can supply green energy, plus you have electrolyzers, plus you have global money, plus you have domestic willpower, India will be one of those countries which will facilitate the development of green hydrogen as the fuel of the future. Then you and I will no longer be having a discussion on fossil fuels and crude oil, etc. There's going to be a massive transformation which is beginning to take place.
Mr. Puri, since we are talking about investments and you were talking about future investments in green projects, but if I may address the issue about the arbitration with Vedanta, sir, where Vedanta has won the arbitration against the government's demand for higher profit petroleum. Does the government intend to appeal against that?
I am not familiar. We are in arbitration in so many cases. I don't know which, I think I know which case you're referring to, but whether we go up and appeal or not, those are not issues I'm going to answer through your good offices, Shireen. I mean, those decisions the government will take, weighing in all the points, the nature of the arbitration, what is the award which has been given, we'll study that, and then we'll decide whether we go up and appeal or not.
Sir, may I ask you a quick question as far as the G20 preparation is concerned, because you're also looking after urban development and of course the countdown, we are in the last lap now towards the G20 ministerial on the 9th and 10th of September. What should we expect in the interim? Many restrictions have been announced by the Delhi police, by the Delhi government, etc. Lay out for our viewers what we can expect now as we get closer to the big event, the ministerial.
I'm probably the wrong minister to be asking that question too, because what you are asking about is the specific restrictions which are going to be there, I think, on the 8th, 9th and 10th. But what I can tell you is that it's
not just the restrictions, sir, not just the restrictions,
but the countries. Well, the country is going to be hosting, I don't know what, 35 people at the level of heads of state or government or more, I don't know. I mean, Amitabh will answer that question of Jaishankar ji in more detail. But that involves issues of security, access. So obviously, if you're going to tone down a little bit on your, other carnival kind of activities which we keep having, there's a beautification of the city which everybody is welcoming. I find my friend Arvind ji is also trying to take a little credit out of that. There will be this thing. So for those days of the summit, obviously, you don't want, logistical and other problems. But as I said, I'm the wrong minister to ask as to what will be the restriction. All I can tell you is the eyes of the world will be glued on the screen. When we did Chandrayaan, I think it got 8 million views. Now you are on the moon and over the moon, and this G20 is a great opportunity to showcase the progress that the country has made under the Prime Minister's leadership from 2014 to 2023. And in the process, we also add support to global efforts for some of the work that we are doing, for that to be replicated in the other developing countries in the global south. And as the Gates Foundation, World Bank people tell me, to replicate that on a larger scale. These are the opportunities that you get. And the G20, I mean, as I said, the Prime Minister and other colleagues have succeeded in producing a template, and it's set the bar so high. I think that's what all other G20 summits after this are likely to be compared to.
And my final question before I let you go, Mr. Puri, and that's exactly as what I was going to ask you, that, the expectation is that on some of these global challenges that the world faces today, whether it's energy security or food security, etc., what would your expectation be? What would you regard as a significant breakthrough at the end of the ministerial on some of these global challenges?
Well, I'm a trained diplomat. I spent 39 years in the Foreign Service. And I can tell you, I'm very confident
which is
that
why I'm asking you,
the efforts which have been made by the Indian team. No, but I don't like to anticipate an outcome, because this is a meeting of heads of state and government, and texts can go to the wire to the last minute. And all I'm telling you is very good messaging will come out from the G20, whether it's energy security. There will be issues. There are contentious political paragraphs, but we have the experience of dealing with them. And I'm sure between Amitabh ji and Jaishankar ji, they will negotiate those. But this will be a G20 which is truly a people's presidency that the Honorable Prime Minister has done. I mean, look at the number of cities which have had preparatory events. Look at the number of cities which have had, and the number of subjects. It's no longer government. There's civil society in there. There are the think tanks in there, and all focusing. And all the more important because we are at a juncture where the multilateral system is facing challenges. The Security Council is paralyzed because the permanent members are in disagreement with each other following developments at the international level. So I think the G20 is occupying much more attention than it would normally do. Plus the world is facing 3 crises: fuel, food and fertilizer. So the messaging out of there when the heads of state and government gather, and the message which will emanate from there will be not only showing India and India's contribution, but also a resurgent India, the new India in the making, the one which is, as I say, literally on the moon.
And finally, sir, before I let you go, since we're talking about the G20, let's address the other grouping, and that is the BRICS nations, because we just saw that summit also conclude. We've now invited Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia and Argentina to become members of the BRICS. Are we likely to see more INR trade in use, as part of trade deals, as part of our negotiations with some of these other countries?
Shirinji, since you are indulging me on the BRICS as well, let me just tell you, please recall where this concept of BRICS came from. It came from certain economists on Wall Street. I remember a particular Indian lady, I think Rupa Subramaniam, I may be remembering, many years ago.
Yes.
They worked out econometric projections as to which are the countries in the world which are likely to register impressive rates of growth. It was intended for people on Wall Street to make investments. And originally you had BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India and China. I was a permanent representative and ambassador to the UN in New York when South Africa got permitted. Now, whenever you set up a group which starts with a concept, then it is developed into a small group, there will always be desire by others to join. Why? Because it's a successful group. Now, where will this go? I mean, there's talk about, currencies, there's talk about de-dollarization. I'm new to many of these concepts. But all I will say is, please, these are very serious issues and their consideration will take place in the fullness of time. It's not that we are zigzagging from one to the other. The United States is the world's largest economy and is likely to remain so for a very long period of time. There are other economies in the BRIC original formulation. Brazil is beginning to do well. Russia has its own preoccupation. India is doing very well. China has some problems. Being I'm a diplomat, I'm not going to say, but if you look at what's happening there in terms of the real estate sector, in terms of the payment crises, etc., will their contribution continue at the level at which they were registering earlier? These are all questions. So before we do a hop, step and jump and come to conclusions about BRICS being bred, no, we've had a very good summit from the Indian point of view. Because I think the flavor of that summit was the moon landing, Chandrayaan-3, and that photograph I saw of the Honorable Prime Minister with the other heads of state and government, saw one with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva with a newspaper open. So that is what the story is. But we have to tread cautiously and tread ensuring that it's both in the interest of India and plurilateral groupings and the multilateral system.
Tread cautiously as far as engaging in the INR is concerned, as well as various groupings. And sir, I just wanted to make a point. It's Rupa Purushottam who is part of that coinage.
Yes, sorry, not
the
Rupa Subramaniam.
Rupa Purushottam. That's right, that we've been talking about.
I met her many years ago.
Appreciate you joining.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did, sir. The big message there from Minister Puri, as far as fuel prices are concerned, should we expect relief there? Well, one, of course, is the message to non-BJP states to cut VAT. And finally, as the minister pointed out, it is a political decision, one that the government will take as it chooses to do so. Always a pleasure, Mr. Puri. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. Appreciate your time and your insights. That's it then on this edition of On the Record. We will take a quick break and return with more. Stay with us.